The wind rolled down from the Badlands like a tired beast, dragging dust across the forgotten settlement of Willow Creek. It was a place where men carried their sins like holsters, where women survived through grit alone, and where strangers were measured not by their names, but by the burdens they carried. And in the middle of it all lived the woman they called the masked widow. Her real name had almost been forgotten, swallowed by gossip and fear. To the townsfolk, she was simply the widow, a title whispered with pity by the kind and disgust by the cruel. Every morning she stepped out of her small, lonely cabin wearing the same faded cloth mask that hid her face from the world. It wrapped from the bridge of her nose to the curve of her chin, tied firmly behind her dark hair, as if she feared even a sliver of wind might lift it. Children ran from her shadow. Men scoffed. Women murmured that she must be hiding something monstrous, something shameful, something too ugly to bear the light. And yet, her eyes told a different story. Those who dared look long enough noticed the quiet pain in them, the kind that came from a wound much deeper than flesh. She worked at the old mission house, feeding the hungry, tending to the injured, hauling water like a mule from dawn until the moon rose. She spoke little, and when she did, her voice was soft enough to calm even the rowdiest children. But the mask, it was all anyone cared about. That cold spring morning began like any other, until the strong hook of fate pulled the story into motion. A wagon thundered into town, its wheels kicking up stones, its horses foaming at the mouth. On the driver's bench sat a young ranch hand named Thomas Bray, wide-shouldered, desperate, and bleeding from a deep gash across his ribs. In the back of the wagon lay a stranger, unconscious, half-frozen, and wrapped in a bloodied army coat. The town doctor was gone on a week's ride. The marshal was out hunting a group of horse thieves. Only one person stepped forward as the wagon screeched to a halt. The widow. She moved without hesitation, climbing onto the back of the wagon with surprising strength. "Help me lift him," she told Thomas, her voice steady and unafraid. "Ma'am, folks say," he stammered. She met his eyes. "Let them talk. This man will die if we stand here waiting for their approval." Something in her tone, firm yet gentle, stunned the young ranch hand into obedience. Together, they carried the stranger into the mission house. The townspeople gathered outside, but none dared enter. They whispered among themselves. "She'll curse him. Heard she hides a deformed jaw. No, it's burns. Terrible burns from that fire. My cousin said she got bit by a wolf, tore half her face apart. Maybe she's hiding something worse." No rumor was too cruel, no imagination too wild. But none of them knew the truth. Inside, the widow worked quickly. She cleaned the man's wounds, stitched torn flesh, cooled his fever with a cloth dipped in lavender water she had grown herself. Thomas watched in awe as she moved with the precision of someone who had spent years tending to broken bodies, and perhaps tending to her own broken spirit. When she finally paused, she asked, "What happened to him?" Thomas swallowed. "We were ambushed out near the Red Mesa. A man who looked Lakota tried to help us, but we didn't understand his warnings. Outlaws were hiding in the canyon. They shot my friend here before he even saw them." The widow's hands stilled for a moment. Not from fear, she had seen violence before, but from recognition. The name, Red Mesa, stirred a memory she kept locked away, a memory wrapped in grief and ash. But she said nothing. Hours passed as she stayed by the stranger's side, refusing to rest. Thomas eventually fell asleep, sitting against the doorframe. The lamps burned low. Night crept into Willow Creek, bringing with it the distant howl of wolves and the murmured prayers of the lonely. Just before dawn, the stranger stirred. He opened his eyes, green, sharp, haunted, and stared at the masked woman leaning over him. Confusion flickered first, then gratitude, then something else, something like recognition. He whispered, I know you." The widow froze. Nobody knew her. Nobody was supposed to. Her voice trembled. "Sir, you're confused. You've lost a lot of blood." But the stranger shook his head weakly. "I've seen those eyes before," he rasped. "Years ago, on the day everything burned." Her heart lurched. It felt like a crack splitting open in the life she had carefully rebuilt. Because if he truly recognized her, Then he knew the secret behind a mask. The same secret that would leave the entire town speechless. And for the first time in years, the widow felt fear, not of judgment, but of the past she thought she had buried in the ashes of the old world. The widow stepped back from the stranger's bedside, as if his words had reached inside her ribs and gripped her heart. The mission house felt suddenly smaller, the lamplight dimmer, the air heavier. Thomas, half asleep in the doorway, blinked awake at the tension. "Mom? Everything all right?" he mumbled. She forced a steady tone. "He's just waking. Fetch him water." Thomas hurried off, leaving her alone with the wounded man whose gaze seemed to cut straight through the fabric of her mask. "You're mistaken," she whispered. "No," he said weakly. "I saw you in the fire at Painted Gulch, the night the town fell." The name struck her like a blow. Painted Gulch, a place she never spoke of, a place she prayed no one would ever remember. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes, those sharp green eyes, held certainty. "You pulled a child from a burning house. I saw you. Half your face." He stopped, as though afraid to continue. She turned away. "Drink your water when Thomas returns. You need rest, not memories." But rest was the last thing her trembling hands desired. Outside, early morning voices gathered as townsfolk spread fresh rumors. They sensed something strange in the air. Willow Creek always fed on the smallest hint of mystery. Thomas returned, offering the stranger a drink. "I'm Thomas Bray," he said softly. "This here's the widow. She saved your hide." The stranger nodded. "Name's Calder. Calder Haynes." The widow stiffened. She had heard that name before. Whispers of a rancher's son who survived the Painted Gulch massacre. A man who had drifted through border towns, hunting the ghosts of the past. When Thomas stepped outside to calm the growing crowd, Calder lowered his voice. "I didn't mean to frighten you, but I remember what happened that night. You weren't some monster. You were the bravest person there." She shook her head, fighting the memories clawing their way back. Flames, screams, collapsing beams, and the searing pain that stole half her beauty and the life she once knew. "You don't know everything," she whispered. "Then tell me," Calder insisted. "No, the past is dead." "It's not," he murmured, "because someone tried to kill us yesterday at Red Mesa. Same mark, same tactics, same outlaws who burned Painted Gulch." The widow froze. Could it be the same men? Calder watched her carefully. "I think they're still hunting something. Or someone." For a moment, the room felt colder, as if fate itself had stepped inside. She steadied herself, lifting a lantern. "You need healing, Calder, not vengeance." "And you?" he asked softly. "What do you need?" Her voice trembled. To be left alone. But she knew, deep in the scarred places of her soul, that solitude was no longer an option. Something from her past had awakened, and it would not go quietly. The widow kept her distance from Calder for the rest of the day, but distance did nothing to quiet the storm inside her. She worked in a mission house the way she always did, washing bandages, grinding herbs, tending to anyone who came through the door, but every movement felt heavier, slower, as if her memories clung to her limbs like chains. Outside, Willow Creek buzzed like a kicked beehive. Folks gathered near the wells and storefronts, whispering that the masked widow had taken in a dying man. Others claimed she'd finally lured someone a curse. The cruelest said she had trapped a traveler, so he wouldn't see what horror lay beneath her mask. None of them dared step into the mission house, though. Fear was a powerful wall. Late afternoon brought another visitor, a Lakota scout named Chaska, a quiet wanderer who sometimes traded herbs and pelts with the town. He stepped into the mission house silently, nodding at the widow with respect that others never offered. "Word of an attack spread," he said softly. "Some say you saved one of the men." The widow nodded. "He's resting, badly hurt." Chaska's gaze sharpened. "Did he say who attacked him?" "Outlaws," she replied. "Near Red Mesa." The scout's expression darkened. "Those men moved like shadows. I saw signs of their horses yesterday. Old tracks, but skilled riders. The kind who know how to vanish." Calder stirred from his cot, forcing himself upright despite the pain. "They weren't just outlaws," he said. "They were hunting us." Chaska studied him with cautious curiosity. "Hunting you? Or something you carry?" Calder hesitated. The widow noticed. There was something he wasn't saying, something more than a simple ambush. Chaska's voice dropped to a whisper. The symbol carved into the canyon wall, 3 jagged lines around a circle. I saw it near Painted Gulch years ago. The widow's breath stopped. That symbol, the mark of the same men who took everything from her. She clutched the edge of a table to steady herself. Chaska noticed her reaction, but said nothing. He simply offered, if these riders are returning, the town is in danger. The widow hid her trembling hands in the folds of her skirt. Prepare the townsfolk quietly. Panic will ruin us before any outlaw can. Calder watched her with a depth she wished he didn't possess. You know more than you're telling us. She met his gaze. And you know less than you think. He exhaled. The night Painted Gulch burned, I wasn't just passing through. My father tried to smuggle something out. Something those men wanted badly. Chaska's eyes narrowed. What? Calder shook his head. I never saw it. But they killed for it. And they're still hunting it. A long silence fell. The widow felt it in her bones. The past had not returned by accident. It had followed the only other survivor who knew the truth of that night. Then Calder spoke the words she feared most. They didn't burn that town to cover a crime. They burned it to find the one person who escaped with the thing they wanted. The widow's heartbeat stuttered. Because she knew. Deep in her soul, she knew. It wasn't Calder they hunted. It was her. Night settled over Willow Creek like a dark veil, and the widow felt every breath of it pressing against her lungs. The mission house had grown quiet, the lamps dimming to soft golden glows, but the stillness did nothing to calm her shaking hands. Calder's revelation echoed in her mind. They burned Painted Gulch looking for the one who escaped with what they wanted. Her. She had carried that secret for years, hidden beneath silence, grief, and her mask. Calder, still pale from blood loss, watched her with unwavering focus. Widow, he whispered, you know something? You were there. You saw what they wanted. She kept her back to him, unwilling to face the past, or the man who had unknowingly dragged it back to her door. Rest, Calder, she said softly. You're too weak to chase phantoms. Then tell me, he insisted, what did you save that night? Her breath caught. He was closer to the truth than he knew. She turned at last, meeting his eyes. It wasn't a thing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a person. Calder frowned. A person? Who? Before she could answer, the door creaked open and Chaska stepped in, bringing the scent of cold desert wind with him. The town is uneasy, he murmured. Some folks seen riders near the ridge. Quiet riders. Watching. The widow's stomach twisted. It had begun. We need to know what they want, Chaska said, turning to her, or they will tear this place apart. Calder's voice sharpened. Widow, what happened that night? She sat beside the lantern, letting the flames glow paint shadows across her mask. For years she had buried the truth beneath silence, afraid of what it would bring. But the time for hiding was over. The fire didn't start by accident, she said slowly. Those outlaws were hired to find a child, an infant barely a few weeks old. The family who protected him refused to give him up. They killed him, burned everything. Calder leaned forward, pain forgotten. What child? Her voice broke. One with a birthmark in the shape of a crescent on his shoulder. A child from a forbidden union and a threat to powerful men. Calder froze, eyes widening. My God, Chaska whispered. You saved him. She nodded. But where's the child now? Calder asked. Her hand trembled as she touched her chest, right above her heart. I gave him away, to a family far from Painted Gulch, a family who would never reveal his name. Calder swallowed. So you hid him, but why would they think you had him now? Her eyes darkened with sorrow. Because the last man who saw me flee that night, saw me carrying the child. The room went silent. Then Calder spoke the words that struck her like a whip. That means they believe you still know where he is. Her voice cracked. Yes, and they will never stop hunting me until I give them a child who is no longer mine to protect. Chaska stepped forward. They marked the canyon again for a reason. They want to remind you they're close. Fear, sharp and cold, slid through her veins. The mask felt suddenly heavier, as if the very fabric carried the weight of all she had lost. Calder reached out, his voice gentle despite the urgency. Widow, you don't have to face this alone. She stepped away from him, tears burning behind her mask. You don't understand. Protecting that child cost me everything. My home, my face, my life. I can't let anyone else suffer for the choices I made. Calder's voice broke with something she couldn't name. But you already saved a life once. Let someone save yours now. She turned toward the window, seeing distant movement along the ridge. Shapes shifting in the moonlight, too steady to be shadows, too silent to be anything but men. The riders had returned, and the past she feared most was riding with them. The moon hung low and pale over Willow Creek, casting long silver shadows across the empty street. Inside the mission house, the widow stood frozen at the window, watching dark figures move along the ridge like ghosts born from her nightmares. Chaska stepped to her side. 3 riders, he murmured, maybe more hiding behind the rocks. Calder forced himself upright, grimacing as pain shot through his wounded side. They're scouting, waiting for the right moment. The widow's pulse hammered beneath her mask. They won't wait long. The first gunshot proved her right. It cracked through the stillness, splintering a post outside the mission house. Townsfolk screamed and scattered into their homes. Lamps were blown out. Shutters slammed. Willow Creek folded into itself like a frightened animal. Calder dragged himself to the window. They aren't attacking the town outright. They want you to come out. The widow felt the truth like a knife. They want me alone. Chaska checked his bow, eyes narrowing. They will not get what they want. But she knew how these men operated. They would tear the town apart, burn homes, take hostages, whatever it took to force her into the open. She couldn't let that happen. Another shot rang out. This one struck the bell tower, sending stone chips flying. They're sending a message, Chaska said. Time is short. The widow stepped away from the window. Her hands, though trembling, found purpose. She moved to a wooden chest beneath her cot. Inside lay a small cloth bundle she had carried for years, wrappings from the night she saved the child. She had kept them not out of sentiment, but out of obligation, a reminder of her duty. She held it close for a moment. I won't let this town suffer for my past, she whispered. Calder pushed himself to his feet, breath heavy. Then we faced them together. No, she said firmly. You're barely standing. I can shoot, Calder insisted, and I will not let them take you. She turned to him, and for the first time he saw not the mask, not the scars beneath, but the exhausted, fragile soul of a woman who had carried too many burdens for too long. Calder, she murmured, I've been fighting alone for years. I know how to disappear. I know how to draw danger away. He shook his head. Don't ask me to watch you walk to your death. It won't be death, she whispered, though she wasn't entirely certain. It will be choice. The riders fired again, closer this time. Hooves thundered down the main road. A voice shouted through the night. Woman from Painted Gulch. Come out, or the town burns. Calder's face twisted with fury. Cowards, he growled. Chaska stepped between them. We make a stand. Together. Willow Creek is not Painted Gulch. It will not fall to fire. The widow looked from Calder to Chaska. 2 men willing to risk their lives for her. A woman most of the town feared, mocked, or despised. Something inside her cracked. Not with fear, with resolve. Then we fight, she said softly, but on my terms. She reached behind her head and untied the faded cloth covering her face. Calder's breath caught as the mask slipped away, revealing the truth the town had feared for years. Half her face bore the scars of fire, warped, painful, permanent. But the other half was striking, strong, and achingly human. Calder saw not ugliness, but courage carved by survival. She met his stunned gaze. They call me ugly because they thought the scars were shame. They never understood they were my armor. She drew in a long breath, lifted her chin, and stepped toward the door. Tonight, she whispered, the riders will see the face they failed to kill. Chaska readied his bow. Calder cocked his rifle. Outside, hooves pounded closer, and torches lit the edges of the street. The widow gripped the door handle. Her past had come for her, but she would face it unmasked,